Great. So I think we'll get started. My name is Ross Yelsey. I'm an Assistant Director of Admissions and Marketing here at the Journalism School. And to get started, I'd like to welcome Dean of Student Life, John Haskins, who will offer some opening remarks before we get going with the rest of our discussion. Hi, John.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or maybe even good evening to some of you. I know you are dialing in from around the world. It's just such a great experience to see all your faces, or at least your names here on Zoom. Feel free to turn on your camera. But it's just great to see you all assembled here and to see our panel here too, to talk about all the different aspects of an education here at Columbia's Graduate School of Journalism. It's an exciting time to be in the field. It's an exciting time to be in New York. It's an exciting time to be on campus here at Columbia. And you're going to learn a lot today. And I want you all to think seriously about the application. The application deadline is just around the corner. You hear a lot more about that. But again, it's just great to see you. And we look forward to giving you a lot of information today and getting you excited about an education here at Columbia.
Great, thank you, John. And I'd like to welcome Associate Dean of Admission and Financial Aid, Taryn Almanzar, who will introduce kind of what we'll be doing in the session and offer some important deadlines people should keep in mind if they're thinking of applying this particular season.
Thank you, Ross. And hello, everyone. As John mentioned, it's absolutely great to see your face and your names. And before I tell you about deadlines and what the session is going to be all about, I just have to say that I'm very excited to see the names and your faces, because as I get to know you, I'm always surprised and amazed of how global, how eclectic the J School really is. We're one of the smallest schools within the Columbia University umbrella, but I have to say it's the most diverse. As you walk in through those doors, you're going to see people literally from all over the world with different educational backgrounds, interests, areas of studies, and professional experience. As I like to call it, it's very New York. So with that said, before we continue and move on, I'd like to introduce two of my other colleagues that are here in the admissions office. You may have already interacted with them either via email, information sessions, individual counseling sessions, but just in case you have not seen their faces, I'll start off with David Hooker, who is our office manager and who knows everything. So it's a good name to hang on to and just ask questions and reach out to. And then we have Edwin Isaac, who you might have met during different information sessions, but who is our in-house guru when it comes to educational financing. Good name to hang on to as well. I will not introduce Ross Yelsey because you've met him already, but just in case you did not know, he's a graduate of the M.A. program. So he's the good person to talk to about the student experience, faculty interaction, so on and so forth. With that said, what you will be hearing within the next hour, it's from our faculty members, current students, talking about and career development, very important career development. What you will be hearing about, it's the programs, what the experience is going to be about, what you can expect as you walk in through those doors. And of course, you'll have an opportunity for Q&A, although most of you have submitted questions, and that's how we've tailored this information session. So thank you. Thank you for sending that in advance. What we will not be talking about. We will not be talking about the different application materials, transcripts, essays, or anything like that. We will not be going into details about scholarship funding, although the J School does offer scholarship funding. We offer over $5 million, but you have to apply for it. You have to hit that submit button on the scholarship aid application. We're going to have on Wednesday a webinar just about scholarship funding, just about educational financing. I will highly encourage each and every single one of you to register for the session, to participate. And if you're not able to join us, we're going to be sharing the videos, and then you can certainly reach out to us instead of individual appointments. Daily, so we have 2 sessions that you can sign up. They're small groups where you come in and you ask any questions that you may have about the application, financing, programs. So there's more than plenty of opportunities to answer all of those questions that you may have about the admissions application, programs, and the educational financing. With that said, I'll turn it over to Ross Yelsey. Welcome again. Reach out to us. As I always say, asking saves a lot of guessing work. Ross, over to you.
All right, thank you, Taryn. And I should mention too, for people interested in asking some questions at the end of the session, we'll be turning on the chat later in the process. So in the last 15 minutes or so of our presentation, you can ask questions there and I will be able to moderate that. So just look forward to that. But at this point, we'll have that off so we can just pay attention to the conversation at hand. And then I'm sure we'll have some questions at the end and we can clarify some things or offer some more details at that point. But at this point, I'm really excited to welcome some of our faculty and current students to talk about our different academic master's programs. We're going to talk about the Master of Science program first, and then talk a bit about the MA program, the Master of Arts program a little later in our discussion. But for our Master of Science program discussion, I'm really happy to welcome Winnie O'Kelley, the Dean of Academic Affairs and Professor of Business Journalism. I'm really happy to welcome Mark Hansen, who is the David and Helen Gurley Brown Professor of Journalism and the Director of the Brown Institute for Media Innovation. I'm really happy to welcome Areena Arora, who's a student in the Msn Data Program, and Bahar Ostadan, who's in the MS program. And I think we'll start by talking with our Dean of Academic Affairs, Winnie O'Kelley, just about what in general the Master of Science program is and what kind of students it's really well suited for.
Thank you, Ross. Great to see you all today. I think this is an extraordinary time to be thinking about a career in journalism. Nothing quite like it. With democracy under assault, with so many issues rising to the fore, whether it's on race or inclusion or advocacy or political clout, it's just an extraordinary time. The MS program is our biggest program at the school, and it is what most of you will probably be interested in. It is tailored for someone who is younger at the earlier part of their career. You have some experience potentially, which is wonderful. We really, really do encourage that. We think that if you've had a little taste of journalism, then you've got a better idea of what it's going to take to succeed and the commitment to do so. But some of you may have worked on your college paper, maybe dabbled in journalism, maybe tried a slightly different route. Whatever brings you to this, I will say that the thing we look for is we look for people who have a passion for journalism in one of its many forms. And it doesn't have to be a particular form. As Taryn said, you come from all kinds of places, and the diversity is what really makes the campus exciting to me. But there'll be that many different goals for what you want to do when you finish school. And our job in the MS program is to provide lots of options for all of those different tracks. The foundational idea is good storytelling and good information gathering is the heart of being a journalist. And no matter how the field changes in coming years, and no matter what new tools come along, and no matter what new platforms develop, we want you to have those skills to go out and succeed. So that's really what we emphasize here. You may be interested in video, you may be interested in audio, you may be interested in being a magazine writer, a long form writer. You will get the experience in the MS program to go into each of those areas. The curriculum is structured in the fall so that we have sort of core classes that prepare you for work in the field. There's a core reporting and writing course, some other kinds of core classes you'll be taking. And then in the spring, you have more options. You have electives in which you can sort of choose routes you want to go. And whatever you think that might be on your way in the door, it may feel very different when you've been here for a short while. So you'll have an opportunity to ballot for classes, which we're doing right now for the coming spring. And students are choosing the things they want to choose from dozens of really interesting offerings being taught by some of the finest journalists in the world, both on our faculty and adjuncts, heavily from the New York area, which is, of course, the media capital of the world. Ross?
Great, thanks, Winnie. Maybe we can mention too, as you mentioned in the MS, the broader program, you can, follow all sorts of different pursuits in terms of audio journalism, magazine journalism, covering business or politics or science or arts or whatever might interest you. So it's not really a program that makes you have to decide a track right away in the program, but there are two specializations in the program. Could you mention the documentary and investigative specializations and who might be suited for applying directly to those?
That's right. We have a documentary program that you would do a specific application for, and the instructors in that program and the overseers of it look through those to see if you have what it takes to kind of make that a worthy pursuit. It is a longer program. It extends for an extra semester. And that is to give you time to complete a documentary. Our Doc Fest, in fact, is going on as we speak. It's a really exciting thing for a group of students to come in with maybe fairly limited skills in that space, which you might have, but to learn how to produce something that you can be proud of and take into market. Actually, quite a few of the documentaries have been picked up lately, and it's very exciting for the students. The Stabile program, which is for investigative journalism, is near and dear to my heart, run by Sheila Coronel, who had this job before I stepped into her big shoes. And it's been around for quite a few years. It has really an extraordinary track record of bringing in the kind of people who really want to do accountability journalism. And that requires a certain mindset. That requires digging, getting to the bottom of things, sometimes a bit of an antagonistic approach to encountering whether it's politicians or business people or other, and trying to get behind the scenes and uncover what's going on. And if that speaks to you, you should apply to the Stabile program because they're turning out wonderful work.
Great, thank you, Winnie. And I'd like to welcome Professor Mark Hansen now to talk a little bit about some areas of journalism that are really growing and a lot of people have interest in these days, and that is data-driven journalism and computational journalism. And Mark, I thought I'd ask you a bit about two programs we offer, the MS in Data Journalism and the dual MS in Computer Science in Journalism, and how those different programs might offer interesting opportunities to people who are looking at that intersection of journalism and data and computation.
Great, thank you. And good morning, everyone. And I apologize in advance. My dog has been acting up this morning. So there may be some barking that interferes, and I apologize. She's adorable though, so we put up with it. So thank you, Ross. So I joined the J School just about 10 years ago now. My background or my technical training is in statistics. And so I guess I'm reasonably qualified to talk about the sort of technical, the sort of data and computer science aspects of a couple of the programs that we offer. Actually, before I do that, I should say that there are lots of offerings in the regular MS program that gives students the opportunity to add data and computation to their reporting practices. So we have data classes that are offered in the second 7 weeks, your sound and vision, image and sound specialties. Also offer a Data 1 and a Data 2 program or a class. And then in the spring, we have classes. I teach a computational journalism class. There's a class on cross-border investigations. The Brown Institute hosts a news products class. So there are a number of things a number of classes that you can take even in the regular MS that start to weave computation and data into your reporting practice. But specifically for the MS in data journalism and the dual degree with computer science. So these are two programs that have been initiated since I started. The MS in Data Journalism is a 3-semester program. It requires no prior sort of technical skills. It obviously requires a significant interest in acquiring those skills, but it doesn't require you coming in with extensive coding knowledge or something like that. Over the course of the 3 semesters, it'll take you through a program that sort of adapts the regular MS reporting and writing and so on, but adds data and computation classes. So you'll take things like the foundations of computation, basic computing, databases, algorithms. These are all important for a practicing data journalist who will be called on to both report on how algorithms and data and sort of technical tools are being used in our society, how they are structured and are in effect sources of power in our world. So journalists need to be able to question those sources, which means you have to understand something about how algorithms work, how data works, what it means to sort of interview a data set. So there's a set of skills that you'll acquire to help investigate those forces in the world. But then also as a data journalist, you will be using data and computation as part of your reporting practice. So data will be something that you will take on as you might a human source, and see, how does that weave into the story and so on. So part of what we're doing with the MS in data journalism is teaching you how to both report with as well as on algorithms and computation and data in the world. So if you have an interest in that kind of a practice, then the 3-semester MS is for you. If you have a bit more technical training, perhaps the absolute bar is, are you able to does your background prepare you for a master's degree in computer science? And if it does, then perhaps the dual degree with computer science is something for you. It's a 2-year program. So the MS data journalism is 3 semesters. The dual degree is 2 years, it's 4 semesters. And it has you moving back and forth between the School of Engineering, where computer science is held or is housed, and the School of Journalism. Well, you'll hear from students, but it's a wonderful program that allows you allows you the opportunity to really dig deep into some of the technical topics, machine learning, data visualization, these sorts of things, and then at the same time dig really deep into journalistic practice and how technical tools and ideas and methodologies might help you achieve a level of sophistication so that you can sort of become a different kind of reporter. Students from this program go into newsrooms, they go into startups, they go into, if you think of journalistic organizations being church and state, they'll find themselves on the state side too, sometimes working on recommendation systems, working on kind of sort of back-end systems that are sort of really important for journalistic organizations to get right. So these students end up coming out with an array of skills. I mean, the world's their oyster, right? It's kind of amazing. So yeah, I don't know, Ross, if there's other things that I should mention.
I think that's a really great overview, Mark. I think one thing I just clarify when I kind of try to give a nutshell description of both programs is definitely the data journalism program, as you mentioned, doesn't really require a background in computer science or computation to do that program. But it's for people who want to do reporting with data really as a key source. Whereas potentially for the dual degree in computer science and journalism, you may be wanting to build these applications and types of software. So it's slightly different potential ambitions in terms of what you see yourself doing when you come out of either program. So one is more potentially reporting, and one is more about sometimes building applications and doing things that will be very helpful for newsrooms or media organizations.
And I think the dual degree is offering computer scientists a professional path that I think a lot of engineering, a lot of statistics students for sure, a lot of computer science students are really interested in. So how do we take the background that we have and apply it to questions in the world that might make a difference, that serves that general public mission of journalism. And I think a lot of students coming out of undergraduate technical programs have that hunger. And so this program would help them with that.
Sure. Thank you, Mark. And one thing I'll just mention before we move on is that if anyone is interested in the dual degree with computer science and journalism, that is the only program you'll be hearing about today where you'd actually apply through the School of Engineering's website for that application. Everything else, if you're thinking of applying to the data MS, the M.A, you would apply through the Columbia Journalism School application page. But if anyone here is interested right now, or is watching this video later, is interested in applying to the dual MS in journalism and computer science, that particular degree program is housed in terms of its application through the engineering school. So we'll put a link later there if anyone is interested in actually applying to that. That's the only exception. Otherwise, you can find all of our program application links on our homepage for the journalism school. So next, I'd like to talk to some of our students about the experience so far in the MS programs. One student from the MS program and one from the MS in Data Journalism program. I thought I'd start with Bahar and ask, Bahar, how did you decide that the broader MS program was going to be the right fit for what you wanted to do professionally?
Yeah, hi everybody. Sorry, my voice is a little caught because I have a cold, but the broader MS, so I think I've been interested in journalism since childhood, but never pursued it. I think due to probably like a combination of self-esteem issues and life society pressures. And so finally in the pandemic, it just felt like, there was time for reflection and space to decide it was the time to pursue what I actually cared about. And so, but I didn't have an idea specifically of like what that would look like in a job or career, which is why the general MS felt just like the safest option to sort of shop around. Like we've talked about, you can take video and audio and all sorts of classes. So yeah, that's the gist.
Great. And as Winnie mentioned earlier, for all MS students, no matter what kind of specialized program, or if you're in the broader program, you begin this program with the reporting module where you're sent out to New York to do all sorts of reporting projects. Can you speak a little bit about your experience in that class, which is wrapped up a couple of weeks ago?
Sure, absolutely. So I had been living and working in New York for a few years, so I wasn't new to the city, but I was new to a lot of areas of the city that we report on in the class, which was just really gratifying to it's just, you have an opportunity to meet people that you never otherwise would come across or talk to. And I think that's like the most special part of the reporting class is you just have a reason to go up to truly anyone on the street and start talking to them. And I really can't think of a normal reason you would do that otherwise. So yeah, it was really rewarding to learn about all different pockets from all the way from Staten Island to the, Northwest Bronx. Every day you're running around somewhere new and learning about all sorts of issues and people. And yeah, I think it's been definitely one of the most rewarding experiences I've had.
Great. And I know for a lot of students, who are able to publish work, if they're able to do that by virtue of being a U.S. citizen or permanent resident while they're in the program, they can publish their work potentially outside of the J school, if they have some really good stories that they want to share potentially with a wider audience. And you so far, I think, have published at least 3 stories, I think, in other outlets, including The Guardian, The Village Voice, and the New York Daily News, based on some of the reporting you've been doing. Can you talk a bit about the process of getting some of those stories out there in these other outlets?
Yeah, so I think in general, all the reporting classes do prepare you to write strong pitches. That's like sort of embedded in the training. And then pitching is sort of something that I think anyone can choose to do with a few extra hours probably at the end of the day. So yeah, it sort of was just, I'm sure a lot of people applying have experience with this, but it sort of was just a process of researching tons of editors, making long lists of editors at different publications, and cold pitching, mass pitching people and following up. And, just keeping track of it and having a little tracker. But yeah, I think for the most part, the professors do train you to craft pitches that are strong and will likely be accepted. And I think they're all willing to look over, if you are ready to pitch, you want to test like the email subject line, all those details. The professors are really excited to get students published.
Great, thank you. And for Areena, I thought I'd ask, what interested you about the Msn Data Journalism program specifically? How did you know that was going to be the right program for you?
So, hey everyone, this has actually been something in the works since 2018. I was working as a local reporter out in Idaho. I am from India. I did my undergrad also in the US in a small school out in Ohio, and then I moved to Idaho, all the weird places for Indians to be. But when I was there, I got a fellowship to attend NICAR, which is a computer assisted reporting conference that IRE does every year. And I remember sitting there, and interestingly, Johnson Soma, who's the program director right now, was also there. It's just funny to me how worlds collide. But I remember just sitting there and feeling overwhelmed, but also inspired. Like, I want to do all these cool things. And since 2018, my career I moved back to India. I worked for Reuters for a bit. I worked for a media startup. Throughout all of that 3-day conference just stayed and weighed in on my head. And that's kind of what inspired me to look into data journalism programs. I could not find a better one than the one Columbia offers. And here I am. That's kind of how I'm here. I don't know if that's a good answer.
Oh, definitely. Thank you. And I thought I'd ask, now that you've been in the program for a while, can you talk a bit about what it's been like to do the reporting as well as learning the data skills at the same time over this fall semester thus far?
So without sugarcoating its sleepless nights, but in the best way possible. Before coming to this program, I was not technically skilled at all. And just yesterday, I'm like cruising through the Chicago building permits website, scraping things. And I'm like, oh my God, I can do this now. I know that sounds a lot of like technical jargon, but the amount of skills you gain in just 2 months, it's insane. I mean, looking back to where I was and where I am right now, I could not be more proud. And I'm not one to brag about myself, but it's a great validating feeling. But just putting aside the technical stuff too, I'm also taking classes in law and ethics and reporting. And I hadn't been reporting for the past 3 years in my jobs at Reuters and the media startup. So it's good to get those muscles moving again. In fact, I sat in my first reporting classroom and I just thought of all the things I could have done better with the skills I now have. It's always good to reflect back on the stories you've done before. It's so rewarding. Ethics class, I took it with Steve Cole. Brilliant man. The amount of opportunities and the rounded structure of the program, I could not be happier with the choice I've made.
Great, thank you, Areena. And Mark, I thought I'd ask you, since you are the director of the Brown Institute for Media Innovation, can you speak a bit about how the Institute works with students in all of our programs, data, MS, MA, to do things at the intersection of kind of data, computation, journalism, and create innovative new platforms or ways of telling stories?
Absolutely. So the Brown Institute is just going into its 10th year. We were established by a gift from Helen Gurley Brown, who was the longtime editor of Cosmopolitan magazine, which is kind of an awesome pedigree. We are positioned half at Stanford Engineering and half at Columbia Journalism, and our mission is to explore the sort of the intersection between technology and journalism, journalism practice, technology development. Primarily, our first mission is that we are a granting organization. So we offer grants and fellowships to students and alumni. Our grants are up to $150,000 each that last for up to a year. And then we've managed to secure some other funding to help in the second year of grants, so that you might have the opportunity to scale your work or to scale the project that you're working on. And our role here is to help students like Areena, who mentioned like the awesome, how awesome these tools are, or how awesome some of the work might be. We want to help you explore that. You may come to us with having no background whatsoever, but we'll provide you with some resources to get something started, or maybe you started something in one of your classes and you want to see it through. So the Institute, my staff and I offer open office hours on technical topics like VR and AR, or mapping, or data visualization, and students come by and we can help them. With projects that perhaps they're doing in other classes, help them sort of stretch into sort of technical ideas. We also have a significant pedagogical mission in the school. So in addition to open office hours, we have training programs that introduce you to tools, like I said, like VR and AR, or mapping, or data viz, or computation, or machine learning. And so we also host seminars by practitioners. So we have data journalists come in and talk to us about stories that they've been doing. We're running a founder series this year, starting in the spring, where students will we'll have sort of founders of news ventures come in and talk to us about sort of what they did and how they pulled it together. Julia Angwin will be our first speaker. We also, pandemic, we tried, but we had I just threw into a chat a link to our recent kind of skills or training event that we had called the Wrangler. It was a weekend. There were 28 sessions going over the weekend. So at any moment, there would be 3 or 4 parallel sessions. And we had practitioners talking to you about natural language processing, like what happens when you have a FOIA request with thousands of documents. How do you scrape through that? We had several sessions on mapping and data visualization, several sessions on immersive journalism. And the presenters came from around the world. I think 7 time zones were represented. So from here to the UK to India, to Singapore, to Taiwan. So it was quite a thing. And had we been in person, we would have had that kind of thing going on in the building, right? And so the Brown Institute's work is to try to bring these ideas to the general journalism public, to our community. And this is my dog. Say hello. But it's her time. So anyway, Brown is there to support you both pedagogically as well as with grants that could keep you at the J School for a second or third year, working on a project or a story or something that you're interested in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And as Winnie also talked about at the beginning of our discussion of the MS, for people in the broader MS program during the fall, they're taking a class called The Written Word and a class called Image and Sound after they finish their reporting module. I thought I'd ask Bahar a bit about the two classes you are in currently and what that experience has been like so far in terms of what you're learning.
Sure. So for the written word class, I'm taking a class called First Person Immersion with Dale Maharaj. And he, who's great and is also my master's advisor, he said at the start of class something that I think embodies the concept in general, which is that like you're going to learn about the issues and people that you're reporting on, but you're also going on a journey to like learn about yourself, which now that I say it out loud sounds a little bit, I didn't say, he said it much nicer, but I think like the role that first person can play in longer form writing is really powerful. You're able to explore stories that are born out of maybe your personal experience or experience your family has had. But also I think on a more subtle level, using the first person in writing allows you to sort of explore how people that you're reporting on are reacting to you, and all the sort of like racial and otherwise dynamics at play there can be, I think, done really well. So I've really loved that class. And then the second class is that I'm taking is video, which has been humbling because I think day one, I was sort of like comical, even holding the camera felt ridiculous is how bad I was at it. But and I'm not good at it now, but it is rewarding just to be able to have produced, we created 3 videos in the semester, short videos, profiles on different people around the city. And, you know, there's sort of like challenges inherent to video, I think, as someone who's used to writing, where like you're having to, you know, connect with people from behind a camera, and people naturally behave differently and are more self-conscious in those scenarios. But it's a good challenge because what you come out with can be really rewarding in the way that you capture emotion visually. So, and then I guess the last thing about video is that I think in some ways I'm drawn to it and enjoying it because it a little bit feels like the people's medium in a way. Like it's so accessible. You can read, you know, everyone's constantly watching short videos all the time on their phones on the subway. And I appreciate that there's reporting that's now coming into like Hulu with the New York Times. And it just feels like, you know, a powerful way to communicate issues to a mass audience and not so much like a self-selecting group of readers, I guess.
Thank you. And as Mark and Winnie talked about in terms of the MS program in the spring semester for people in the full-time MS, you'll have 2 classes called seminar and production classes, where if you're in the broader program, you're going to have 2 choices of like classes you'll take for that full length of the semester on a whole range of topics in terms of journalism, in terms of platforms, and kind of topics of storytelling. Excuse me. And for people in the MS data program, you can take 1 class, you know, outside of the data world on whatever topic interests you within that seminar and production menu of options. I thought I'd ask Areena and Bahar about, you know, what the process has been like. I know you're balloting currently for your choices and what it's been like trying to select what you want to potentially pursue for the spring. Maybe we'll start with Areena this time.
All right. It's been difficult balloting because there's way too many choices and I want to do everything, but I also know I'm not humanly capable of doing everything. But I really not exaggerating when I say this. There's a lot of really, really interesting classes being offered for the data program, which is what I can speak to the best about. So we, in this semester, did a lot of just understanding the basics of computing, databases, analyzing data. And then the next semester is more focused on kind of quant editing and data visualization with the history and business of journalism. So again, like I said before, a very well-rounded approach. And we get to pick up 1 elective For me specifically, I am really, really interested in environmental journalism and the intersection of being able to report on climate with data. Mispronouncing data is not a good look on me. Anyway, so I actually picked covering climate, which is being offered by, I am horrible at remembering names, Margaret Holloway, sorry. Brilliant professor. I mean, I haven't taken a class with her yet, but I met with her to discuss the class a little bit, discuss what kind of interests I have. It's actually being co-offered by another professor who his specialization is in photography. So it'll be interesting to kind of bring three of those worlds together. Again, that's very specific to my interests, but the wide array of options being offered, you really, really get to mold your career choices, moving forward, because this is where you specialize and then you bring all those skills together. I just want to add one thing that's not directly related to this balloting process. But the other thing that's really reassuring about being at Columbia G School, so I went to a really, really small undergrad school, small to the point that some of my classes were 3 students and the professor, and you could not skip class. But even though Columbia G School is a little bit bigger than that, I get so much individual attention. It is so great. I mean, just now, just as this Zoom call is going, I have messages on Slack from my professors checking in on my final project for this semester, giving me advice, and that's really, really helpful. That kind of hand-holding. That's just enough hand-holding where it's not overtaking what you are doing and learning, but it's also really reassuring, really supportive. Sorry, that's not directly related, but I didn't know where else to plug that piece in.
No, that's really great insight. Thank you, Areena. And for Bahar, what classes are you looking at for the next semester?
Yeah, I think just as Areena said, it was like a painstaking process to write them, which happened just until midnight the other day. But so I guess for the general MS, there's sort of a whole wide range of classes. I sort of thought about it in terms of there are a number of writing classes that are different styles of writing, narrative, magazine length, profile classes. And then there's sort of a bucket, I guess, of more technical classes. So you can go further and specialize in video or photography or audio that you maybe started in the first semester, and other technical ones like Professor Hanson's class. And then there's some sort of, I guess, maybe thematic, you could call them, classes about like covering criminal justice, covering race, covering climate, like Areena said. So I sort of manically decided to take the risk to ballot for the short documentary class with Doylin too, because I sort of was craving the opportunity to work on a video that was more substantive and maybe could go more in depth than the shorter pieces that we'd worked on in the first semester. So hopefully that will be okay. But yeah, a whole wide range of classes and all amazing professors. So honestly, it was like a painful process to pick.
Great, thanks. And as you mentioned, so you're thinking of taking potentially this class called Multimedia Storytelling, where you would create a short doc. And that is a good thing to point out, is if you're not doing the MS documentary specialization, which is, as Winnie said, something for people who really focused on that type of storytelling for sure. But if you want to gain skills in short documentary storytelling without necessarily being in the doc program, the broader MS still offers classes that would allow you to gain some skills in that particular area, even if you're not specializing in that type of storytelling. So it doesn't preclude you, by not being in a specialization, from picking up some really great skills in the broader MS. But great, thank you. And though we've been talking about the MS for a while, and now I thought I'd switch gears and talk about that Master of Arts program, which is another program we offer at the school. And Professor Winnie O'Kelley teaches in that particular program. So I thought I'd ask Winnie to first kind of tell us just about the program in general and how it differs from the MS in terms of who it's kind of intended for.
Yeah, thank you, Ross. Yeah, the Master of Arts program is really intended for people who want to get a deep fundamental understanding in a particular area. And there are 4 areas in the MA Arts program. First is the arts. There's arts and culture. Then there's a business and economics concentration, which is where I oversee it. There's politics, and there's science, which is includes Margaret Holloway, who was spoken about earlier because of her passion for environmental and climate stories. So you choose one of those areas, and in theory, you have a few years experience as a journalist, but maybe not in the concentration that you're applying for. Maybe you've been a generalist and you really think, I'd like to do something much deeper in this area. It really speaks to me. I know I get that question a lot. I don't have business journalism background. I'm like, that's okay. business journalism background and economics background is a wonderful foundation, whether you want to be a foreign correspondent or you want to be a political reporter, or if you want to cover education, because you got to follow the money, right? So if that's what you want to learn, come apply to this program and you will get a foundation that goes much deeper into that area of expertise. And I like to point to something that one of our newest faculty members said recently at a meeting, Zeynep Tefekci, who's been writing for the New York Times about the pandemic. Many of you may have read her work. She's been very articulate. And she said, this is what the future of journalism looks like. And maybe newsrooms have not responded quite quickly enough, but the expert, someone who can really decode and understand a subject matter in a deep way, is in great demand. And it is in great demand. And it's one of the reasons to think about this program if you have basic reporting experience. You're not going to come in and take the basic reporting class that was described earlier, where you run around New York. That will not be what you will be doing. But in each area of concentration, you will have a seminar focused on that subject matter. It's pretty intense. It meets twice a week for 3 hours each time. And then you'll take some other courses immersed in that subject area. And when you finish, you will then be able to say, look, I have a deep understanding of this, and I can really slot into coverage of this particular topic. I think it's really rewarding. I think it's really challenging. And I also want to mention the capstone for the program, which really is, I think, one of the biggest draws for it. There's a master's project for the MS program, but there's a master's thesis for the MA program. And students tend to report that over the Christmas, January break. We have a few weeks in there before we come back after the holiday. And they put forth a proposal. They work with an advisor. There is money available for travel. One of the hallmarks of this program is you can put together a great proposal, seek funding to go to. I mean, we were just looking at an amazing proposal for Namibia. There's so many places to cover and so many stories to do. And that is an 8,000 word master's thesis or the equivalent. Yes, it can be done in another medium, and we can talk about that. But that really gives you a chance to do something of great substance and long form. For some people, it feels like the beginning of a book. For others, it's the first time they've gotten to really go into that kind of depth and do the kind of extraordinary narrative storytelling that is available to them. So that's really the highlight.
Thank you, Winnie. And I'm really happy we have a recent alum of the program, Caleb Pershan, with us, who is a graduate of the M.A. Arts and Culture concentration from last year and is now a fellow here at the Columbia Journalism Review, writing for them. And so, Caleb, I thought I'd ask you, what was your inspiration to apply to the M.A. program and specifically to the Arts and Culture concentration?
Yeah, sure. So I had been a full-time journalist writing for Eater about food and restaurants. I wanted to specialize kind of deeper in culture. And I heard from colleagues and other journalists about the program who had wonderful experiences. Arts and culture was a great fit. I loved the two professors who teach the seminars in the fall and spring, Elisa Solomon, wonderful theater critic, and David Haydu, an excellent music journalist, really top notch. So working with them was really special. I decided to do a thesis based on transportation, culture, bicycle ridership in New York City. The pandemic meant that I needed to do something local, and so chose a topic near and dear to my heart because I was bicycling up to Columbia every day. I worked with Elisa Solomon on that. It was an incredible experience. I spent several full days with her on Zoom, going line by line through my story and really perfecting it. It was a wonderful experience. My writing got a lot better.
Great, Caleb. And I know, in the MA program, one thing that makes it also stand out from the MS is that in the MA, you're often taking classes in other areas of the university. So there's usually 3 subject area classes, 1 in the fall and usually 2 in the spring that you'd be taking, and other departments that will help you, know more about what you're reporting on. Can you talk about your experience taking some of those outside courses during your experience?
Yeah, this is a huge selling point for the MA program. It is you take graduate level courses across Columbia. Obviously, we all know Columbia has lots of great graduate schools. The journalism school is just one of them. I took a graduate level history course with a professor that I really admired, Adam Tooze. He's an incredible economic historian, a real genius, and taking his course was a serious challenge. We're reading a book a week. I found it great, and now yeah, I'm keeping up with his work. He just wrote a great new book on the shutdown, and just a great person for me to know as a source, as well as a teacher. In the spring, I, instead of taking electives outside of the J School, took an elective within the J School. Excellent course on nonfiction book writing with Professor Sam Friedman, who's just a real luminary. And I know that is not what everyone does in the MA program, but I thought it was an excellent use of my time. Professor Friedman's mentorship was incredible. And I think that, a lot of people in the MS program and the MA program should consider applying for that course.
Great. And yes, the book writing class is definitely a real commitment because you are developing basically a sample chapter and a proposal introduction that you're going to try to potentially interest, editors and agents in, if that's correct. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. And Professor Friedman has gotten 100 book contracts for former students of his over the past 30 years. And he was able to connect me to a literary agent at the end of the semester. So big win for me.
Great. And that's, I should mention to people who are watching, that's something that would be open to MS, mainly MS students, but also potentially MA students. And you have to apply by application. You have to kind of pitch something to Professor Friedman about what you want to do to get into a class like that, to see if it's a viable kind of project to do in the time you have in our program. Great. And while I have you on, Caleb, I thought I'd ask just a little bit more in depth about your master's thesis project and how you worked with Elisa on that, or what was kind of the process like of developing that over the 2 semesters?
Sure. It is, it started out with a topic, bicycling. Elisa said, great, that's a subject, that's not a story. What is the story within this topic? Worked in the fall, in a course that's required for all MA students, evidence and inference, worked to do a literature review in which I read, all the scholarly articles about cycling studies, city transportation, and eventually pitched Elisa on a number of specific ideas about different topics within different stories within cycling. Found one sort of fringe cycling advocacy group that I thought was compelling, and went really deep on them. Went cycling with a lot of their leaders outside, which was allowed under Colombia's COVID restrictions. Elisa showed me how to do some great archival work. I dug up some really incredible letters between the great urban theorist Jane Jacobs and early cycling advocates in New York City. That was just, very special work. So Elisa really pushed me to go deep in the archives. I sent her several drafts. She had me rewrite lots and lots of things. It's a long process. It's very difficult, but very rewarding. And hard, good work.
Great, thank you, Caleb. And Winnie, since you are a core faculty member in the business concentration, and we have you in this conversation today, this would be a great opportunity just to tell people a little bit more about that particular concentration and what students might learn about and do projects on if they're in the business track.
Sure. I'm an enthusiastic believer in having financial literacy in whatever you're going to cover. So it's a good foundation. But in the fall, the seminar focuses on sort of what we call the sort of the macroeconomics topics. So we start with sort of the big, broad economy questions. And for people who've even been covering business journalism, maybe they've been reporting on a tech company or something, many of them don't have much foundation in this and are quite surprised. So we run the gamut. We look at economic cycles. We look at downturns, like the one we've experienced through the pandemic, big recessions and depressions and expansions, what that means. We look at all the economic agents, whether it's businesses or consumers or policymakers and what they do. So the topics will cover everything from fiscal policy to monetary policy to consumer behavior to inequality. And we do that in an international context, although there is obviously a lot of focus in the US as well, but mostly because those examples apply wherever you are reporting around the world, trying to understand, what does it mean if consumers suddenly start saving more, which happened a bit during the pandemic? What are the ripple effects of that? What does it mean when employees start quitting their jobs in large numbers? What are the ripple effects from that? Those are the kind of things we wrestle with. And it's a pretty exciting, very broad topic. In the spring, for the spring seminar, we shift a bit to what I think of as more micro, and maybe what many people think of more as business and economics journalists, but it's half the year. And in that half, we focus a little bit more on financial markets, on economics of companies, like the decision makings that are being made all the time. Will you go to the capital markets to raise money? Will you go public in an IPO? Will you decide to get venture capital? How companies function and how you cover companies and industries and the incredible change that's going on all around us all the time. So the people who graduate from the program are well qualified to go out into the world and to cover, say, I can do this beat. I can cover retail companies. I can cover the US economy. I can cover the Federal Reserve. These are the kind of things I feel comfortable being able to move into. And that's what we really look forward to over the course of the year. We haven't been able to get out of the classroom as much as we used to. I'm looking forward to that maybe next year, going out and interacting more with folks in New York. But we do bring in a lot of speakers, some top people in their fields, the kind of economists you'd be interviewing on the job as a working journalist, and many of the kind of journalists who've gone on to develop these kinds of extraordinary expertise that make them very much sought after in the field. They come in and talk to us about how they get their ideas, what are sort of the critical turning points you look for, how you ferret out fraud at a company, what kind of sources you look to, how you deal with whistleblowers, and everything in between.
Great, thank you, Winnie. And now we have yourself and Mark Hansen, who read applications every year as members of our faculty, and we have 3 people here who are successful applicants. They've been admitted to the school. One has graduated already, and 2 are currently here. I thought I'd ask all of you, in no particular order, if you have any advice about making a strong application to Columbia Journalism School. What do you think really will help you stand out, in your opinion?
If no one's going, I can go. So I've actually been helping some friends of mine who are not applying to journalism, like some engineering friends of mine from back home. And I think the one thing that is common to grad school application process as a whole is don't try to pretend to be something you're not. I'm classmates with people from all over the world. It's a very small program. There's only 21 of us, but there's people from all over the world. And the one common thread is people really want to study data journalism. People with all sorts of levels of, computer literacy, all sorts of levels of journalism literacy. But there is that really genuine passion and desire to do what they're doing right now. And it's not only for the application process, even if you somehow manage to get past by faking it at that level, you will not be happy when you're here. So you really don't want to do that to yourself. That's one advice I would give. If you are going to be sleepless over something, if you're going to be working hard 20 hours a day over something, you really want to enjoy the process. And that I would say is my biggest advice. For specifically international students in here, I would be more than happy to help out. You can reach me on Twitter and LinkedIn. I'm very active. If you want someone to just look over last minute or something. But the one advice that I always hold close to my heart is don't try to pretend to be something you're not. It's just not going to get you very, very far.
Thank you, Areena. Anybody else with some advice?
Sure, I'll just jump in and say, if Dean Cole, who is the Dean of the Journalism School, were here, one of the things he often points to that I really like very much is that journalism is a great equalizer. If you're willing to work hard and to apply yourself, it's something you can do. And that's one of the things that's really exciting about it, actually. And so I think what we're looking for is people who demonstrate that they have either that desire or that they've put some effort into understanding the profession. They've been writing stories. They've been trying to get some things published. They've been delving into what really works. What causes a story to work? How do I think about it? They've been thinking about the issues that journalists face every day. And they're not afraid to go out and tackle sometimes big subjects and to confront uncomfortable truths. I like to say that it's okay to be an introvert. I get asked that quite often, actually, like, I'm an introvert. Can I be a journalist? I actually know some fabulous journalists who are very much introverts who talk about how it gives them the power to talk to people. But you have to be a little bit willing to be uncomfortable. You're going to be in uncomfortable situations. Maybe you're approaching a stranger on the street, as Bahar mentioned earlier, that might be an uncomfortable situation. You might be asking someone a very difficult situation and maybe a tragic moment in their life. You might be putting a politician or a business owner on the spot with a very difficult line of questioning. And if you have that, and if you can show that you're interested in that, that sort of says to us, okay, this is someone who's committed to going down this path. And what we're looking for here are people who are committed to going down this path and who will excel. We have no interest in bringing in someone who's going to say after a few weeks, nah, this isn't really what I wanted to do. This isn't quite what I thought it was going to be. Try to understand what journalism is, and is this the right fit for you and why? And then tell us that in your own words. That's what we really want to hear.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Well, I'd say that it wouldn't hurt you professionally and in terms of your application to read the excellent work that the faculty has produced in their ongoing careers. The professors at the journalism school are amazing, and I think that reading their work would enhance your understanding of the field and your application. Zainab Tufekci, amazing hire. Go read her. That's helpful.
Great. And finally, for everyone who is currently a student or recently graduated, is there any advice about how to make the most out of the time you would have in one of our programs? As you know, our programs are generally relatively short, usually 2 semesters, sometimes 3 for our master's programs and 2 for some of these special programs. But in a relatively short program, what kind of mindset or skills do you think are really important to have to kind of make the most out of an education here?
Yeah, I guess one thing is that, like you said, because it's such a short program, there's no really time to warm up. And so I think be ready for that mindset where, like I said, for the reporting class, you're sort of thrown into it. And I know a lot of people who maybe weren't working in a newsroom before were really nervous to go, including myself, really nervous to go up and talk to someone. It's kind of like, it feels like a personal attack sometimes when people are angry with you, or, it's like a little bit trialing, and you're like, you sitting in a parking lot wanting to cry, but it's worthwhile, I think, to just dive in from the start, because then you'll sooner get stories that are meaningful. It'll be gratifying sooner than if you're sort of like tiptoeing and timid at the beginning. And I think I found pitching to outlets, if you're able to legally, to be really valuable for a number of reasons. I think one is that it gave me, as someone who hasn't worked professionally in this industry before, I'm able to understand a little bit about what different outlets value and how different editors operate. And so even in the few that I've published this semester, like my reporting professor placed a great emphasis, for example, on historic context. So I had a little line in one of my pieces about redlining that an editor then slashed and said something about, like, I don't want to give a history lesson in the story. And so you just get to know different outlets. Like, is this someplace that I would want to work after graduation? Or, I'll take what I get, but it seems valuable to learn that. Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, just adding to that, don't miss out on, just have fun. Don't miss out on opportunities that you have, the conversations that you can have. Stay that 1 extra minute outside campus. Reach out to your professors. Just talk to people. One thing is that you have access to all these brilliant professors, but the other thing also is your classmates are equally just as brilliant. They're from all over the world with different kinds of experiences. Especially for my ethics class early on in the semester, some of the richest conversations I had was in preparation for the class, and read like the things that, the things I discuss outside of classes, the way people from all over the world looked at those ethical issues. Just come here and have a lot of fun. It will be difficult, but it's going to be a lot of fun, really rewarding. Like I said early on, I like to track how much I progressed. So at the end of the semester, it's really good to look back and say, oh my God, I did all that. I don't believe it, but I did it. It's great.
Thank you, Areena. This is some really great, this has been a great discussion with everybody. I really like to thank our faculty members, our students, and our alum for talking so much in great detail about what it's like to be a student here and to learn here. I see there's a question, someone's raising their hand. We're gonna get to some questions a little later. We'll be doing that in the chat after our next part of the presentation about career development. And so to segue to that, I'd like to welcome Gina Boubion, who's the Director of Career Development, who will talk a bit about, after you're, while you're a student, ways to start to think about your career path and the ways that that office will work with every student to start to think about, what kind of careers they're looking for and how to position themselves when they're on the market as they go through the program. Thank you, Gina.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I have prepared a PowerPoint that, so I'm going to just share the screen and talk to you that way. So I am part of the career development team here at Columbia J School, and I'm really happy to talk to you about careers in journalism. Our team does guide students from day one in the industry so that you can be competitive in the job market by the end of the year. So first, a reality check. There's no guarantee of a job after graduation. We don't know what the journalism job market is going to look like in May 2022, May 2023. It actually looks pretty good right now as journalism, as newsrooms are coming out of the pandemic, but we really we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know which companies will fold or have layoffs or reinvent themselves or even launch. I mean, even in the thick of the pandemic, some really high quality newsrooms launched, and we've been able to connect with them and get them to hire our students. So there will be companies that emerge in the digital space, in audio, and in other platforms. But regardless of the flux in the journalism industry, regardless of what's going on in the general economy as well, Columbia Journalism School students do well in the job market in the months and the years after graduation. So I'm going to share with you some statistics from the class of 2021 that just graduated. There were two groups of students that graduated in 2021, one in May and one in August. And so I'm going to, so the figures that I'm showing you will give you a bigger picture of how Columbia students fare and what these figures can possibly tell us about the state of journalism in general. So at graduation, as of August 31st, 94% of the class of 2021 in the data set, 76% of the class of 2021 had plans lined up. And that is a broad category that we define as jobs, paid internships, further academic schooling, freelance careers, and such. So these numbers do tick up with each passing week of summer and fall, as graduates let us know where they've landed after that first position at J School. So just in the last couple of weeks, we have heard from May and August graduates whose internships have turned into full-time jobs, and August graduates who are landing that first position after J School, which is typically an internship. So for the last about 10 years, we have seen a range of 71 to 77% of students employed as of graduation or within like a week or two of graduation, with one notable exception. The class of 2020 graduated at the height of the pandemic. New York City was a hot spot. Lots of internship programs were canceled. And so that summer, only 60% of the class had something at graduation. But it's a completely different picture a year later, and the economy, the journalism economy, seems to be rebounding. So some more transparency. This is a pie chart that shows you all the different categories of positions. So like I said, 76% of the class had plans lined up as of August 31st. And that's 165 students out of 218 total. It was a kind of a small class last year. A lot of students were deferred to this current year. So this does include the May and the August grads, with the May grads more in the range of 82 to 83% employed at graduation, and the August grads at around 65% employed. And this is as of August 31st. So this discrepancy between the May and August grads is completely to be expected. And the past experience indicates that the August grads are still catching up. And this, so this pie chart shows you all the different kinds of jobs. So what does stand out when you look at this pie chart? I hope it's the large blue slice. I want to talk about that for a second, because this is the share of positions that were internships and fellowships. When we talk about internships, we are talking about paid positions in newsrooms practicing journalism. Our students do not do unpaid internships. So that is a misperception that we like to tell students about, because many of you are coming from other countries or parts of the country where you assume that it's an unpaid internship, and that is not the case for our students. So for as long as we can remember, the internships and fellowships have taken up the largest slice of the pie for years and years. It is a trend that we have seen for all groups here, the US citizens, the international students, the MS students, and the MA students. So if you separate out the students who are still looking or are taking time off and only consider the students who have found positions, half of the positions are internships and fellowships. So you know, it's definitely something that we have seen. For the international students, the dominance of internships is even more dramatic. About 75% of the international students in last year's class who had a position lined up at graduation, it was an internship and not a job. Journalism internships in the United States are the standard way that news organizations find and train new talent. And like I said, we're talking paid internships. Not even one student per year takes an unpaid internship. And every time it happens, and it's really, really infrequent, it's because that newsroom was their dream newsroom, that they turned down other things to take that internship. But honestly, there wasn't a student in the last year's class who took an unpaid internship. So it's really unusual. We love internships. It's how a student catapults from journalism school into some of the most prestigious newsrooms in the country. And I'm going to talk about internship pay in a bit. So next, I see there are a number of you who are international students or potential future international students at Columbia. So I'm going to talk to you about our international students just for a moment. So this chart shows how the international students have fared compared to the US green card holders over time. International students, the trajectory is the red line, and the US students is the blue line. So up until 2017, as you can see, these trend lines are really fairly even. And then that first year of the Trump administration, those lines diverged a lot. That year, there were a greater number of international students than usual who decided to just go home. And in addition, there was a year when students' work visas were really delayed, and which messed up some plans for students. In 2018 and 19, that trend corrected itself, and the international students did as well or a little better than the US students. And then the pandemic happened. The class of 2020, like I said, obviously graduated into an economic catastrophe, the international students were particularly hard hit. Some of them had to leave and go home immediately. Some of them got stuck here as travel restrictions shut down. But that year, only 56% of the international students had something lined up at graduation, compared to 64% for the US students. Huge improvement in the class of 2021 for both groups. So as of August 31st, 78% of the international students had plans at graduation. And by the way, kudos to Bahar for getting published, but I want to just say that the international students find jobs and internships without publishing outside of Columbia while they're in school. You're not allowed to publish outside of school while you're on your student visa. And I just want to assure people that people find jobs and internships without getting anything published. So just want to say that, but congratulations to Bahar. Once again, our students take internships. Internships last from 10 weeks to 12 months. These are paid positions in newsrooms where you're pulling your weight. You are not doing menial tasks. You're not making coffee for people. You're not going picking up people's laundry. All this stuff that you hear about and see in the movies, it does not happen here. You are doing journalism, and it's going to be a very busy news cycle for the next couple of years as the United States heads into elections, and it's going to be an all hands on deck experience for the class of 2022 that's graduating next summer, and for the class of 2023 that comes next. The vast majority of our international students will be able to get work experience here in the United States after graduation on an OPT work visa. OPT, if for those of you who aren't familiar, it stands for Optional Practical Training, and it is an extension of your student visa, and it gives you a 1-year work visa, work authorization to work in journalism in the United States after J school. Those of you in the STEM, in the data and comp sci programs qualify for an OPT STEM, which is a longer OPT. It's like three years. Business journalism, economics journalism is where many of our international students often find opportunities because of demand and because of the language skills that international students often bring to bear. So if you come here and you want to get sponsored, in other words, stay here long term, I got to be honest. Business journalism is a safer bet than any other field. Spanish language skills are also in very high demand. Mandarin skills are in high demand, and so we have seen students who speak those languages also find sponsorship. So it is unusual, however. So I want to show you this next chart is really fun. This shows you how all those positions that we talked about earlier, the 76% of journalism jobs and internships, divide by platform. So the red line is the digital only publications. And as you can see, over the last 11 years, that line has gone sort of inexorably up. There was this strange, plunge in 2019, but then it bounced back. So the bouncy blue and green lines, that's the broadcast trajectory, which includes video and audio, and the newspaper trajectory. And what's amazing is, so the red, blue, and green lines account for 80% of the jobs, and that's been jobs and internships, and that's been the case for the last 10 years. With some jockeying amongst those different positions. So the orange line is the magazine trajectory, internships and jobs and magazines. Definitely on a downward slide, an unmistakable downward slide. It's magazines do not do a lot of hiring, and that is a fact. And it's because, well, one of the reasons is our many digital only publications, that's where magazine style writing has migrated. And that's where our students apply. Magazines like the 19th, which covers, politics and policy, economics through the prism of gender, or the Marshall Project, which is about criminal justice. That's where you're finding that long form investigative feature writing that used to be only in print magazines. So that's kind of what we're seeing here. The purple line is the trend line for the wire services. That's Reuters, Bloomberg, Agence France Presse, AFP, the Associated Press. Most of these positions are business and economics reporting positions, and this trend line has been low, however, steady for years. We saw in the summer of 2020 when Reuters canceled its, suspended its, actually Reuters and AP suspended their internship programs. And, but, in 2021, 7 students in the class of 2021 got wire jobs at Reuters, Bloomberg, and the AP, and that accounted for about 3% of the class. It is how you become a foreign correspondent, or one of the most, tried and true ways to become a foreign correspondent is to get hired by one of the wire services, because they have bureaus all over the world. Okay. Let's move on. So this is just, the news companies that hired our students over the last couple of years. In 2021, 118 newsrooms hired at least one student out of the class of 2021. The full list is on our website. The majority of students in the class of 2021 who found a job, 54% were hired to report and write, regardless of platform. In distant second place, 22% of the class was hired mainly to do video or audio production. And this makes sense because there are fewer students at Columbia who are seeking to do video and audio production than there are students who are seeking more traditional reporting and writing jobs. Another 10% of the class took jobs in data journalism and computing. The takeaway, we hope, is that our students find the kind of work they want to do across all platforms in all kinds of newsrooms. Students who are open-minded and flexible about their first stop talk after J school, we'll have better success. In other words, broadcast companies like CNN are looking for breaking news reporters to write for their websites, not just students with video and audio production skills. Newspapers are looking for video and audio producers and not just reporters. So that's what we mean by being flexible. What are we hearing about remote versus in-person now in newsrooms? Well, some newsrooms are still working remotely. Some are gradually returning to working in person. In 2022, we do expect remote work to continue to be possible in some cases, and particularly at the nonprofit newsrooms that cover specific cities or states or single issues. The remote format was kind of how they were operating before the pandemic, and it worked for them during the pandemic. It makes sense for the 19th to have reporters all over the country, and for the Marshall Project to have people situated all over the country. So, it's not something that's going away. However, it's for typical newspaper reporter jobs, we're hoping that, newsrooms get back in person, because that's when you get to have face-to-face contact with your editor and get sent out on stories and do the kind of typical, reporting from the ground. So regardless of the uncertainty posed by the pandemic, and the dynamic nature of the journalism industry, Columbia students who hustle will prevail no matter what's going on. And that's what we've seen. So let's talk about pay, if I could briefly. So for internships, that's going to range from $600 a week, which is $15 an hour, to $1,200 a week, with the typical pay being like in a range of $600 to $900 a week. And so, like I said, internships are temporary. They end, and then something else happens after that. And the full-time job ranges from 30 to 70, and it's a huge range. And it's because that lower range of 30. Honestly, it's typically the on-air reporting jobs, full-time jobs in smaller markets. And, you sign a contract and you go to some small town to be the on-air reporter, and you get great experience. And then a year later, you move to another job. And so that's kind of just the pattern in that field. The higher paid jobs are oftentimes business reporting or data journalism. And that's kind of what we've seen. So, the minimum wage here in New York is $15 an hour. So that is going to be the minimum. And it's typically better. Again, their internships are your foot in the door, and you make your move once you're in. So we do have anecdotes about what happens long-term as far as salaries. We don't have comprehensive information or detailed definitive information because our students tend to be a little skittish. They about sharing that information. Sharing salaries is still sort of considered private information. I do wish that students would be more open and transparent. But that is what it is. And but just in the last couple of weeks, we've heard about a M.A. graduate in the Master of Arts program who got hired after his internship at a substantially higher rate of pay than he was making in the internship. Another MS student told us that her internship at one of the wire services, ended, and she was hired into another role at nearly double what she was making as an intern. And the same thing happened with a student who graduated from the class of 2020, who called us just to say, "Hey, good news! I just left my small anchor job, on-air reporting job in my tiny little station in the South, and now I'm making double working for the Washington bureau of one of the major networks." So this is the general rule is you do get an increase in pay, oftentimes a substantial increase in pay once you move from an internship to a job. Okay, many students make contact with companies through the formal process through the formal application processes that newsrooms set up during the fall and spring, or at the Career Expo. The Career Expo is the biggest journalism job fair in the country. And in 2021, it was virtual. It was the third virtual career fair that we've held since the pandemic started. And it was huge. It was the biggest journalism job fair in the school's history. 416 recruiters from 147 news organizations attended from 5 countries across multiple time zones. So these recruiters were editors, producers, news directors, and also company recruiters, HR people, and many, many alumni, working journalists who participated in the Expo as recruiters. More than 1,700 scheduled interviews took place between our students and employers. So before the pandemic, we would hold a very large in-person career expo on campus, and it was terrific. However, the virtual career expo opened doors that frankly, we were amazed, and doors that had been closed before. We had editors calling in from Vancouver, from New Delhi, from Tokyo. We had a dozen editors participating from the Los Angeles Times, and believe me, this did not happen in the in-person expo. So the virtual interviews gave our students a lot of practice in interviewing, and that is really how newsrooms are doing doing first interviews now. They're doing them virtually. So it was actually really good experience, real world experience. And for this reason, we're doing it again. We're doing a virtual career fair in March 2022 for the class of 2022. And it's going to be huge and fantastic. So that's something to look forward to when you come to Columbia. Now, you can search on LinkedIn if you're interested in certain newsrooms, and I recommend that you do this for all the grad schools that you're considering. Go to LinkedIn, look up the school. Ours is the Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism LinkedIn page, and click on the alumni button. You can poke around and just dial in whatever publication or country that you're interested in working in, and just see what the alumni network is like at these places. And this is just a very, very partial list, and so I recommend that you take a look at that. Next, I just like to talk about the trajectories of some students, and these are randomly chosen students that I've decided to just give you a little bit of a trajectory on them. We have a lot of students who came directly from undergrad. This happens every year. And so Pablo was a Mexican citizen who was working for a publication as an intern in Mexico City. And he came to Columbia, and then as he was graduating, he got a 6-month-long fellowship at NPR. He couldn't be happier. Taya had a few internships. She went to NYU and did internships like during the school year, and ended up interning at Politico after graduation. And they did offer to extend that internship, but she decided to take a full-time job at Forbes instead. The pay was better, and it was a job instead of an internship. Shin Hee was a Korean student from who went to Bowdoin College in Maine, and she was a research assistant at the Washington Post in Beijing. She came to Columbia, and then she got the Columbia Journalism Review Fellowship. We also have a bunch of career changers, people who, people who don't want to be lawyers anymore, people who don't want to work in finance anymore. And we also have teachers who have sort of come to the school with the real passion to report on education inequity. And so all walks of life. And so this is just a few of them. Pranshu he was in city government and before Columbia. And after Columbia, he went right back to Philly to report on City Hall. And he had this big, he had all these sources in City Hall. So he was just an ideal intern. Then he got the New York Times Fellowship, which is the year-long fellowship. And now he's a tech reporter at the Boston Globe. So he graduated in 2019. Laura was working in financial aid at NYU, and she wanted to become a journalist. She didn't want to work in academia anymore, although she's still interested in education. But she went to a small station in Savannah, and is now in Washington. Kate, I said we get lawyers every year, and we do. And so she was in the Bronx DA's office, and now she's a reporter in New York for News 12. Knows New York obviously really well from her job in the DA's office. And lastly, we get students who've had a lot of experience beforehand, or some, solid grounding in journalism, either through a bunch of different internships or having worked in journalism. So Tuan is one of these students. She had internships every single summer in college out at UCLA. And after Columbia, she got a couple different offers, and the one she took was at athletics. She really, really wanted to be a sports reporter. Daniel was in the Army, Marine Corps. And he was, after the Marine Corps, he became a reporter and then an editor at a small paper, a small daily paper. He was in the M.A. business concentration, and she came to Columbia, and he took, after all those years of reporting, he took an internship at Bloomberg, which was a wise move, because Bloomberg uses its internship to recruit and hire and train for full-time jobs. And that's what happened to him. And that's what he's doing now. Joyce was working at a tiny station in Biloxi, Mississippi, really wishing she could elevate her stories, reach a wider audience, do the deeper dives instead of the rushing to this or that crime scene or fire. And so she came to Columbia to sort of, stretch and grow. And she got the summer internship at Reuters in business journalism, and now she's at ABC News. Reuters did want to hire her, but she really wanted to go to ABC, so she took that fellowship, and she's in it now. Hannah was working for the BBC, covering youth issues for the BBC, and she came to Columbia hoping to get a different beat. She was a little bit tired of the youth beat. And so she came here to sort of shift gears, and she got hired on the Guardian's audio team, producing their sort of version of the Daily, the New York Times Daily. So she's really happy. The last thing I'd like to show you is, last week, I was just actually yesterday, I was looking for stories that our students have recently published. And our students are publishing constantly. I opened the New York Times today, and the front page of the real estate section was by a grad named Stefanos Chen, who is a New Yorker who covers real estate and also kind of investigative real estate for the New York Times. So you can take a look if you're interested. This story is by Amel Brahmi, who was an M.A. politics student with quite a bit of experience in reporting in France and in the Middle East before she came to Columbia. And she just had this, she's in the PhD program now. She's actually getting a PhD at Columbia, but she just got this story published in the Guardian. She also holds the distinction of having a baby during the M.A. program, which is very unusual. So she has 3 children, really unstoppable. So anyway, this ran just a few days ago. This story, the Surfside condo collapse story in Miami, as everyone knows, was just a major story of the summer. And we had 10 or 11 grads working that story in the Miami Herald newsroom. Sarah was one of them. She was in the Stabile Program when she graduated about 5 years ago. And she is on this small team of investigative reporters at the Herald that she's been picking apart every detail of that story. And so this ran last week. The Herald is, I would assume, they're going to submit all their coverage for a Pulitzer. So they've been rolling out all these stories all week. And so this was a really great story, sort of a TikTok story about just every last minute before it collapsed. And so this next story this is actually not a story. So Zoe was from Zimbabwe, and she was in the doc program, and she just got a Netflix deal, which is so exciting. In South Africa, there was a competition in South Africa to get major funding, huge chunks of change for documentarians, and 284 submissions were received by the National Video and Film Foundation of South Africa, and it was winnowed down to the final 12, and then it was winnowed down again to the final 6. And Zoe and her doc partner won, and so she gets to produce her documentary, Real Estate Sisters, in 2022. Just fantastic news for her. So that's all I had for today. I will hang around if anybody has any questions about careers.
Great. Thank you, Gina. And so we have a few questions in the chat. I noticed some are more about the application, so we welcome you to write to us at apply.journalism@columbia.edu for those kind of specific application questions. And we also encourage you to go to our scholarship webinar, which our Dean Taryn Almanzar mentioned, which will be this Wednesday. I'll put the registration link again in the chat, and that's a chance for you to talk more about the scholarship application we have at Columbia Journalism School, and also learn about financial planning options with our staff about those particular questions. But I think we're almost to the end of where we're scheduled to end, but I thought I'd take one last question about balancing kind of the demands of the program and having kind of as much of a balanced life as you can. This is a question, I guess, for our current students and alum about any recommendations you have about trying to keep some sort of balance while you're in the school.
I want to jump in because I'm really passionate about this question. And the reason I'm passionate is because I obsessively love cooking. And that's kind of what keeps me sane, just homemade food and making sure 1 a.m. nothing is going to happen on my computer after that. Like, I'm not going to be able to study. I'm not going to be able to focus. I'm just going to while away on Netflix. So 1 a.m. is my time when I cut it off. Obviously making sure I meet deadlines and then sleep on time. I kind of bring out I'm not a mom, but I bring out my mom energy when I tell people learn how to cook the absolute basics before you come to New York City. It's very, very expensive. But even if you could afford all the food in the world, just having a homemade meal, for me, Indian food is how I just, feel happy. So just like, just a plate of good food, fruits. That's how I keep my sanity in check. I highly recommend that. I'm sorry, I'm really passionate about cooking. I could go on about that.
That's great advice. Anybody else with any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't have advice on that, but I'm taking notes on what Areena said because I'm not good at it myself. But I guess one thing that I've been trying to work on that I think is important is just creating like boundaries and distance when you're working on difficult story topics. That's something I didn't anticipate so much until starting the program. And found myself like really bringing home certain topics and sources and interviews that would sort of like circulate in my head, late at night. And so, yeah, I think certain practices of like a ritual maybe at the end of when you close your laptop that will sort of distance you from a difficult topic is probably a good mental health practice.
Great. And yeah, we had a question here in the chat about career changers and kind of what percentage of the population in the MS class they might compose. I don't have like a real statistic on that, but I would say that in the MS class, because it is a very kind of open program to people from all sorts of backgrounds, whether it's where they're coming from in the world, or the types of careers they've had before, or the types of educational experiences they've had before. It's a very open program. So I would say that we do have a good number of people who come to our MS program within a few years of finishing maybe their undergrad program. Some have already been working in journalism a little bit. Some have been working very formally in it and want to get better skills in the MS program. And some are definitely career changers who may be, former teachers or people working in finance or in medicine or law and want to gain a new skill set to, join the journalism profession or to use some of the knowledge they have from their previous career in a kind of more of a journalistic fashion. So I'd say it's a very open program. If you have that passion for storytelling and for doing journalism, there's no real reason to be intimidated about applying to the MS program. It's a great program to really gain all the fundamental skills. And then, as Winnie was saying, customize that and learn about the specific things you really want to learn about, whether it's certain beats or mediums of storytelling. And then Gina, a question just to clarify a little bit about how your office, the Career Development Office, will work with students, over the course of the, the actual program in terms of not just doing the Career Expo, but the kinds of, interactions you can have with your office to build your resume, portfolio, all of that when you're, applying for positions.
Sure. We encourage students to meet with us one-on-one during the first semester. It's a long sort of sit down that lasts about an hour. The students on this call have done that. And it's helpful to anchor you for the rest of your job hunt. We also have, we teach you how to write cover letters. We bring in dozens and dozens of speakers all year long. There's on any given day, there's too many events happening at the J School and you cannot attend everything. But we invite employers in to talk about their newsrooms. A lot of alums will also stop by and talk to students about their newsrooms. It's all sort of part of your journalism education this year is, when you're here, is learning about the job market and the kinds of journalism that different companies do. So it's a lot of one-on-one and training.
Great, and thank you, Gina. And then one final question I see in the chat that I can address here, which is whether data journalism could be a class choice within the broader MS program. And as Mark Hansen explained a little earlier, Professor Hansen, definitely if you are thinking that you want to explore some areas of journalism, but you don't necessarily want to focus quite yet on one path, whether it's the MS in Data Journalism program, whether it's the specializations in investigative or documentary journalism within our MS. Within the broader MS, you can definitely take classes in those areas of journalism and get a sense of what they are, do some really strong work in it, and see if it really is something that resonates with you and something you want to carry on professionally afterwards. So the MS has data classes, it has investigative classes, it has documentary related classes in it. So you definitely don't feel like if you didn't go into a specialized program or do the data journalism program that it totally kind of walled you out of the chance of learning more about those areas of journalism. So the broader MS is a great program for people who definitely want to do journalism and maybe are still unsure of exactly what they want to explore, or have a couple things they definitely want to explore but haven't committed to one path. So I'd say the broader MS is a great fit when you still have a lot of things you're interested in and haven't quite settled on a real particular path yet. So that, I think, covers most of the questions we can cover today in the chat. I know we've gone a little over our time. I'd like to thank Bahar, Areena, Caleb, Gina, Mark, Winnie, and everyone else from our staff here for joining us today, and for everyone for tuning in. As I mentioned in the chat, you're welcome to reach out to us at apply.journalism@columbia.edu for any direct questions you want to ask about the application process, application scholarship, other questions about the right program that might be suited for you, all of that. And definitely join our scholarship webinar this December 8th, which is Wednesday, to learn more about that scholarship app and how that works. So I'd like to thank everyone again for coming to this session, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend wherever you are in the world, and we look forward to being in touch. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Bye.